for tuning into Roll Call. The movie you selected is Bordertown.
Hey everyone, welcome to Roll Call, the show where two childless millennials gush over movies and follow an actor's journey from their early years through their blockbuster hits.
Because let's face it, we miss Blockbuster.
We sure do. And I think with the general tone of the movie that we're discussing today, I don't really have a funny quit bit or like ha-cha-cha, little rat-a-tat to go with that. So I'm just going to say, yes, we sure do. We miss Blockbuster.
Yeah. Yes, the tone of this movie is very serious. So, hi, what's up, guys? I'm Bria, and I would like to take a moment to consider the thousands of lives of women lost in Juarez and encourage anyone listening to at least look up the subject and give these women's stories a few seconds of your time.
Very well said. And I'm Simone, and I absolutely second that. The movie that we're about to discuss today is based on true events and does depict scenes of sexual assault. So listener discretion is advised for this episode, and if you are going to watch the movie beforehand as well.
So, everybody, in today's episode, we'll chat about who else but our girl Jennifer Lopez in the 2007 crime thriller Bordertown. So, Simone, let's take a trip back to the span of February 2007.
Yes. Okay. So this segment, I'm going to try to be as concise and considerate of everyone's time.
I never am, so I don't know.
Well, I also figured too, so this is the only movie that we're going to be covering in the year 2007, as our next film is, we're going to skip a few years ahead in 2010. So what I'm going to do is kind of generally cover some of the pop culture classics that were happening in the year of 2007, and then I'll also cover some of the movies that were released more specifically in February 2007, because this movie, Bordertown, had a couple of different releases. It didn't really quite have a full theatrical release in the States. It did premiere in Berlin, Germany, but didn't really make its way down to the US. So we kind of have some conflicting dates when it comes to like theatrical releases and just a straight to DVD release. So to keep everything to keep our bases covered, I am pulling information from a website called Pop Culture Madness. This was an article posted by Joe Hummel, written on December 30th of 2007. So it's like a great little chef's kiss wrap up to what was happening that year. Number one, the world changed forever when the first generation iPhone was released in June of 2007.
Wow. That was 2007?
That was 2007. And I remember going back to school in the fall of 2007 and then into 2008, which would be my senior year of high school. And it was a big deal who had an iPhone and who didn't. To put things in perspective, I didn't get my first iPhone until 2011, 2012. I mean, I feel like I think my first iPhone was maybe the 4.
Yeah,
because it intimidated me.
Same. Well, I mean, given how much they cost now, which is like thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But the first iPhone was definitely another big like piggy bank breaker, because it was not the price of a razor or chocolate. It was a high-priced phone.
Yes.
And you needed a good amount of data to utilize the internet capabilities that were so much more expanded with that kind of phone. So it was very rare. I only knew of a few people in my school that had one. And then in college, obviously, it became more common to see people with iPhones. But in my circle, we all still I had my razor on and off throughout high school. I had a chocolate. I had an Envy with a nice keyboard. People still
Mm-hmm.
had sidekicks and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a game changer for adults primarily, switching from the iconic BlackBerry as well to the iPhone and the touchscreen versus tactile keyboard debate. But wow, such a moment
I
in
know,
history.
truly a huge moment. And then in hipster news, Tumblr was launched in 2007 as well.
Wow.
So shout out to all you little hipster kids, a la like myself. I felt like Tumblr was a very safe transition from MySpace in terms of just sharing pictures and reposting stuff. You felt almost like a little blogger.
Yeah, and it was way more individualistic than Facebook.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I miss Tumblr.
I do too. I mean, it's still around, but not like it used to be.
Yeah. We
The
should make a roll
Amazon.
call Tumblr. Oh my god. I'm gonna do it.
We
You guys
should. We
check it
should.
out. I'm gonna make one once this.
www.tumblr.com/roll call/we love JLo. And it's just strictly Jennifer Lopez and blockbuster memes.
It will change though as we do other actors, but always JLo content probably. Oh my god, that's
Always.
such a. I'm just putting more work on my plate. Okay.
The Amazon Kindle was also released this year, so paper books are beginning to be on its way out. I would say it almost sounds like the theme is like 2007 is this huge takeover of technology. We're
Yes.
transitioning from um, these older, I mean, I don't even want to say like older phones, but what kids now look at older phones and are like, oh my God, what is that? But I mean, technology on the scale of history really has only been around in just the quickest blink of an eye. But we see this iteration of computers in our pockets, thousands of books to be able to store it on one device. And I remember there was that big debate of are you a paperback person or are you a Kindle person?
Are you, Simone? What's your
I was gifted a Kindle in 2015. So I definitely I have one. I do enjoy using it. I like reading at night before bed. That's actually a total lie. I'm a really bad reader. Like I love the idea of
Look at you lying to the podcast people.
I love the idea of I love having physical books, and if I do like a book and if I see one at a store, I will pick it up for myself. But one was gifted to me for my birthday, and it had some like preloaded classics on there, and so it is nice, you know, to have it. It's really lightweight. It's in your backpack. Blah blah blah. We're not sponsored by Kindle. What about you?
I'm probably like 50-50. Certain books I do like having the hard copy of because I do have a bookshelf and I would love to have like a nice solid bookshelf of books, and I think that's impressive, especially in the era of Zooms. You see people's like bookshelves or their artwork behind them, so you step up my bookshelf game. So I kept like a lot of books from Seminar to look smart. Like, yes,
Oh yeah,
I have
like
the
what,
Aeneid.
Don Quixote, the Iliad, the Odyssey.
Yeah. So I do like a good hardback book or physical book, but I do enjoy reading certain books on. I don't have a Kindle, but I have an iPad, so I use the Kindle app. So I do enjoy reading, like being able to sample a book to see if I even want to read it or will like it. So books I'm not really sure of I'm gonna like authors that I really know, like, oh, I'm gonna like this book or I like this person enough to buy like their autobiography, I'll get physical copy of. Another thing in this day and age is audiobooks, which I listened to Mariah Carey's book on audiobook. That was my first audiobook. And I think that's cool because she read it herself. So I think that adds so much more to the experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like probably 50-50 with Kindle versus or digital books versus physical. And then like, I don't mind. I think certain books can be read on audiobook and get a pass from me. But
Definitely. And like you said, it depends. It's really special if the author narrates their own story. Um,
my
and
smutty books, I prefer those digitally so that no one knows what I'm reading. No book cover needed, make a little homemade book cover. So it's like, oh, what are you reading? Oh, nothing, just a self-help book. All the moms reading 50 Shades of Grey.
Seriously,
Definitely on the
yeah.
Kindle.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. The top song of 2007 was Crank That Soulja Boy.
Yo! Oh my god, they played that all the time for the volleyball team, and so tennis and volleyball were the same seasons, and so we'd be getting ready in the locker room together, and you'd hear it in the gym, and yes, that song is just etched in my brain along with Fergie with the school gym.
Oh my gosh, yeah, dude, talk about an epic song. Some of the top movies, which weren't necessarily released in February 2007, but some of the top movies were Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Enchanted, The Golden Compass, and Juno.
Juno. That is a movie I borrowed from a classmate who was like, have you seen Juno? And I was like, no. I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna bring it so you can borrow it. And I was like, okay.
I remember seeing Juno with my mom and having a very open conversation about like teen pregnancy, because I was 17 when that movie came out, and so was Juno. So it was just like, are you using protection?
Also, Juno is our gateway to teen mom.
Truly, yes, that movie really sparked the
or
era.
16 and pregnant, then teen mom.
Yes, correct. So good.
I still say I have to pee like Seabiscuit. That is one movie line that has stuck in my brain.
Or we call people home skillet. Like,
oh yes,
that's one doodle you can unsketch, home skillet. So good. Oh my gosh, the dialogue. Hamburger phones. Juno, we love you.
I want to rewatch it now. Okay.
The price of an iPod 2 second generation was $150 in 2007.
That's it?
I know. Wow, which is so crazy because iPods are dead since everyone just has an iPhone, and those are at least $1,000 to $1,200.
I mean, because it's an all-in-one. I mean, it's a camera, it's a video camera. Hell, you could podcast from your phone.
But young people who are listening to this show, you have to think you weren't there. So this is pre-recession. This is like right before the bubble is about to burst, and we are about to go into like a huge spiral as Americans. I mean, shit, we're still just somewhere in the middle of this cyclone.
Millennials have never gotten out of the spiral. We got sucked into the sunken place.
I am crying. Yes, that's so true. Millennials are just still in the middle of the tornado, and boomers and Gen Xers like kind of found their way out there, but millennials are like trying to like paw and crawl our way. But you guys weren't there. Like $150 now seems like, oh my god, what? That's it? But in 2007, like, it was a big deal. I sound like I am a survivor of the Great Depression, but you weren't there, okay?
I mean, we've talked about this, I still have my iPods, and I plugged in my Nano, and it still works. The screen's messed up, but hey, in a pinch, power outage, or I can't charge my phone?
Yes. We love you. They did. They knew how to make them.
Did the iPod Touch come out yet? Because before I had a smartphone, I did have an iPod Touch. And
I think iPod Touch was 08 or 09. It did not come up in my 2007 research.
Yeah, okay.
But we also, some other fun 2007 trivia, what was happening at the time. We get LOL cats. We get Can I Has Cheeseburger. That was a very popular phrase of the time. And then in speaking of cats, Keyboard Cat, a viral YouTube video, blew up on In America's Hearts. Bria's shaking her head.
Keyboard Cat. You're lost, I'm lost.
Keyboard cat was someone who was like manipulating and making their cat look like they're playing the keyboard, but it went like bow 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 bow, and he was like wearing little sunglasses, and it's just like a cat. Never mind.
You're a cat lady, so this is relevant to you. So all the cat ladies, cat men out there.
Okay, all right, and then I am going to read a very famous quote that came from the year 2007. I want you to tell me if you recognize where this quote came from. Okay. I personally believe that the U.S. Americans are unable to do so because some people out there in our nation don't have maps, and I believe that our education, such as in South Africa and in the Iraq and everywhere like such as, I believe that our education over here in the U.S. should help the U.S. or should help South Africa or should help the Iraq and Asian countries, so we will be able to build up our future for the children. Do you remember where that came from?
Okay. Is it fictional or is this real?
Legit. This is real.
Is it Sarah Palin?
No, but good answer. Good answer.
Okay, then I absolutely have no clue, but that was hilarious to listen to.
That quote was from Miss America.
I knew it sounded. That's why I was like, "Is it fictional?" Because I was like, "Is this from Miss Congeniality?"
Yes,
it sounded very pageanty, but I was just like, "Okay, 2007, 2008 elections coming up." Like,
yeah. No,
okay,
your thinking was solid. Miss South Carolina, Miss Sweet Lauren, Caitlin Upton just did her best, and Mario Lopez is out. You have to YouTube it when we're done, Bria. Mario Lopez is like co-hosting Miss USA, so he's like holding up the microphone, and his face is just like, like he's trying really hard to hold it together, and you see this baby angel. I mean, listen, pageant life is a beast of its own. So I am not trying I'm not trying to poke fun at this girl because it's obviously so difficult to be under that pressure and to answer the question at hand. And then
I mean, you didn't make it viral, so
I didn't make it viral, but yeah, so anyways, that was a huge thing. This poor girl just like losing her way. And you can kind of see her trying to calculate the math and get back to this original thought. And she just couldn't. Ugh. Lord
We've
bless.
had worse presidents, so.
We truly have,
okay,
honestly. Caitlin. It's okay, Caitlin. In celebrity news, Anna Nicole Smith died from a drug overdose at 39 in 2007.
R.I.P.
Yeah, R.I.P.
I listened to a really good podcast about her.
You did? What's it called? Shout it out.
Shout out to You're Wrong About, which I love a lot of their episodes. Kind of stole their intro a bit when we say hi and our little one-liners, but yes, they have a good like couple of episodes about women from the 90s who were misjudged, like Lorena Bobbitt and stuff like that, where the story got bigger than what actually happened and was so sensational. So like Anna Nicole Smith obviously is well known for doing Guess and then her marriage and then plastic surgery and then the Anna Nicole Smith show. But yeah, she really loved that old man.
Yeah. Sorry. I didn't know how to. She well, we could just cut my response out, but I think that she is truly someone who is misunderstood and misjudged. And unfortunately, we didn't know that until posthumously, until after she died, that we knew a lot about her, and that's not right. In other news and other celeb news, Red Hot Chili Peppers sued Showtime after the cable TV network named a program Californication. That's right. Rapper Akon had a rather sexy dance with this 14-year-old lady at an over 18 and only party concert in Trinidad. Yes, he admits it was not his best idea. And some other huge news in 2007. Paris Hilton spends 23 days in jail for her DUI. Lindsay Lohan went to rehab 3 times in the year of 2007. Nerd legend Freddie Anderson completed Super Mario Bros. 3 in only 13 minutes and 11 seconds. So step your game up, Kevin. And as we are coming in this pop culture news of 2021, we are very much eyes towards our beautiful babe, Britney Spears, and we are all rooting for her. But we know that 2007 was a very difficult year. 2007 was the infamous year that Britney shaved her head and had her quote-unquote meltdown per se, but a very justifiable mental health break. And of course, knowing what we know now, we would have never said what we had said about Britney in 2007, but we wish her nothing but the best. We want you to be free, Britney. We want you happy and
fly
healthy
like a bird.
We want you to fly like an eagle.
Yeah, that was just another woman who the media blew what was happening out of proportion and definitely misreported stuff and misguided a lot of the population to just be like, oh, Britney's crazy. Yeah, no. She wanted to shave her head and the person wouldn't do it, and so she's like, I'll do it myself. She did it
herself. She wanted people to stop fucking touching her, and I really appreciate that.
That, and then on top of that, you're getting hounded by paparazzi after the fact. So, of course, you're going to take an umbrella. Like, if you're at your wit's end, like...
Yes.
We all understand now. So, yes. Free Britney, baby.
Free Britney, baby. 4 movies now. Now that we've had a great discussion of the fun highlights of 2007. Bordertown, like we said earlier, had kind of a mixed release in terms of coming out in theaters, but we're going to go by February of 2007 when it had its actual premiere. Other movies that came out in 2007 were Ghost Rider, starring Nicolas Cage and Eva Mendes, I believe.
Is this the comic book movie?
Yes, it's the comic book movie. He has a flaming skull face, rides a motorcycle.
Cool.
Bridge to Terabithia, also based off of a book, if you read it. And I think like most kids read it in 5th grade, 4th grade.
I just want to say that also we have our boy Harry Potter to thank for all of these like movie wannabe trilogies coming from the woodworks. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Bridge to Terabithia, obviously Twilight. What's that one? Shoot, I can't remember. But yeah, just tons of book
Charlotte's
series.
Web.
But tons of book series getting movies made to entice the young kids.
Yes, to read more, hopefully. But I know a lot of people would just like watch the movie and pretend like they read the book, but that's not the same thing. The Number 23, that's that like psychological thriller starring Jim Carrey, where everything revolves around the number 23.
That sounds familiar. I'm pretty sure
it was when Jim Carrey like took a step away from comedy. So this is when we get Eternal Sunshine. Yeah. So we get more like serious roles. We have Music and Lyrics starring Hugh Grant and Drew Barrymore.
Oh, okay.
Norbit starring
Black people love Norbit. I don't personally, but like it is a very quotable movie.
Yeah. Is that the movie where we get Hercules?
No, that's the Nutty Professor.
Oh, okay. Where he's also fat.
Yes.
Okay.
Norbit, he plays Rasputia, and also Norbit. And Norbit and Rasputia are in this relationship where Rasputia is very much abusive to him, but Norbit has low self-esteem, so he really doesn't think he can do any better. But he winds up falling in love with Thandie Newton's character. But it's very quotable. I won't quote anything, but I like how out of all the movies you listed, I'm just like, oh my god, Norbit. Okay.
Well, I don't know. It was kind of like an month. So the other two that I wrote down were Factory Girl, which is about Edie Sedgwick when she meets Andy Warhol, and it's Heath Ledger's wife.
Michelle Williams?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't remember that. And then Tyler Perry's Daddy's Little Girl. Those were like kind of the big, like highest grossing movies of that month.
Most black women's introduction to Idris Elba. Or most Americans are black women. Yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, if you watched The Wire, then you also would have known of him, but Daddy's Girls.
Yeah, he's hot.
Yes.
All right, so that's kind of my wrap up of all-inclusive 2007 pop culture by the time this episode airs. And listeners of the show, if you feel like there's something pivotal that we missed, please go pick a fight with Bria at Roll Call Pod on Twitter. Just kidding. No, just send us a message on Instagram or Twitter. Let us know what were some of your favorite 2007 highlights.
Such a pivotal year in technology. Like,
it was huge. Yeah.
Go back, go break the iPhone and throw it away. Like Apple, Steve Jobs. No, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, well, this website had said that like Steve Jobs was one of the most famous people this year, just because this really is the year of Apple. Like, we've always known Apple had like cool, trendy stuff going on. iPod was already out, and we have the cool like home desktop iMacs, but Steve Jobs, I felt like gained almost being way more of a celebrity with this year, just because of iPhone and all the other shit.
And I feel like too, at this point, like we start to see this shift of Apple being like the must-have everything, whereas like even before the iPhone, like you could have an iPod, but most likely you had a Dell home computer or some kind of PC at home. You didn't have a Mac for the most part. Like Macs were very still niche, but like you start seeing them on like TV shows where teenagers have them. They become the most popular computers for college. You start getting the you start getting the Mac versus PC commercials with Justin Long and
I'm
stuff
a Mac,
like that.
I'm a PC.
Yeah, so like the cultural zeitgeist of Apple is like on the up and up, and the iPhone I think just sends it over the edge. Like, so what a fabulous time. All right. Well, I hope you guys had fun, because we're about to get serious with this movie, I feel like. So
agreed.
Buckle up or get out of here if you want to stay lighthearted and fun. But we're going to talk about the movie Bordertown.
Are you ready to hit us with some numbers here about what it cost to make and what it ended up grossing?
Yes, hopefully my number dyslexia doesn't mess up. So Bordertown, like you mentioned previously, was released in Germany, in Berlin, at the Berlin Film Festival, and it didn't really have a US release. So the only gross I have is for worldwide, which is $8.3 million. It approximately costs like around 25 million maybe to make the movie. It's kind of an indie movie too when you think about it. So that's impressive. And I think there was some like issues with getting money for it, like loans and stuff that I saw. But I don't really know about that. But not really a blockbuster. And I mean, seeing that it's a film festival movie, that usually happens. Like once you premiere at a film festival, it's up to, critics, not critics, but people to see the film to be like, oh, we want to buy that movie and distribute it or something. So, womp, womp, womp. And it was released straight to DVD in the United States, so it didn't have a theatrical release in the United States, and that happened in 2008. So it took like a year even for that to happen. And a big part of it even getting made was, of course, Jennifer Lopez's involvement. She was also a producer, and I'm sure she, like, her name being attached helped get a lot of the money necessary to even make it. So props to you, J-Lo, starting to do some movies, like passion project movies with El Cantante and then Bordertown. So muy thumbs up from me. And then there isn't a Little Raj review.
Really?
No, there
Probably
is
just
not.
because it was like a smaller release.
I'm guessing so. So Simone, I would kind of like you to Lil Rajas. What do you think he would have gave Bordertown?
Wow. Okay, all right. That's some pressure. I think based on the merit that this movie was made, based on the fact that Gregory Nava and Jennifer Lopez, I truly believe, had the best of intentions with making this film and getting the story out. I think he would have picked apart some aspects of the plot, but I think overall Little Raj would have maybe given this 3.5 stars.
Okay, I think that would be my guess too, probably. Not terrible, but also not like, oh, I love this movie, Blood and
Yeah.
Wine.
Yeah.
Never letting that go. So obviously there was no Roger Ebert review, but I did read Variety's review, and I'm so glad that you brought up the merit of this story, because it seems like other reviewers did not so much consider that. And so the Variety review points out possible cofactors or causes of the real crime spree, such as rife drug-related criminality, domestic violence, or U.S. citizens crossing the border to kill for kicks being unexplored, and the central blame being placed on the maquiladoras NAFTA or /NAFTA. So a lot of reviewers had an issue with the blame being placed on these factories, on these border towns in Juarez and Chihuahua, and the NAFTA deal that allows that to happen, and the U.S. benefits from that, and not enough possible blame being shown to possible drug-related crime like cartels and such, gang relation, domestic violence, stuff like that. But in my opinion, I don't find that a problem necessarily. I think a movie can only, you don't want to overextend, the driver of your plot. Like if like you had, like we talk about, you have to pick a lane and kind of stay in it sometimes, and they picked a lane. They were like, we're gonna go with this side of the story. And I would like to point out too that Gregory Nava talks about how he fashioned this script after a lot of interviews and conversations he had with people and probably factory workers. So that probably informed his decision to make that the driver of his plot versus, I guarantee you, cartel people are not talking to a screenwriter, film director about killing women in Mexico. So I think this was the most accessible way he could tell this story, probably.
Yes.
And then also, obviously, I feel like Jennifer Lopez is damned if she does and damned if she doesn't.
Yeah.
So they go on to point out that Nava even coaxes first passable performance from Lopez in many years, although she looks too fussily groomed. Even after she's been through a fire and almost raped, her mascara is still perfect in the morning after. I was just like, when I watched the movie, first of all, initially I was like, oh, this is a serious ass movie. This is not okay.
Yeah.
You know, paying attention. Was not prepared for this story. I am not looking at Jennifer Lopez's mascara. Now, I will say I did have a problem with the wig, and we will get into that. But things like that, I feel like it's just trying to pick apart Jennifer Lopez, even though she's doing a movie out of like feeling the need to tell a really important story and informing people of something real that is going on and doing her best to use her platform for such. But we at this movie reviewers want to hang up on like, oh, well, she didn't look like scruffy enough to be really like a on the scenes reporter. It wasn't, you know, she still looked very J-Lo-esque. And it's like, oh, okay, sure. And then
Yeah. I'm glad you, sorry, just to take a quick segue break. I'm glad you said that because like you and I in conversation when we talk as the show has been launched and as we have established, you know, or trying to establish a presence on social media, something that I've learned is that people are either really they either really love JLo or they don't. And I didn't know that Roger Ebert didn't have a review for this movie, but I also when Bria and I switch roles for this show, I try not to look at what she's assigned to do. And so for this episode, you know, she was doing the reviews. Now when you're on IMDb and like just like doing general research for the show, sometimes it's hard to avoid those things. And so I did glance at a couple of reviews just on IMDb, but anyone could write a review on IMDb. You don't have to be like a professional journalist to write about it. But one person had written a really great review.
I wonder if we picked the same one, because I have like two I picked from IMDb too that was like, see, these people are being reasonable.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, here, let me just pull it up really quickly. It's on IMDb, and it's just it's sad to me when people on the site asked if Gandhi was a fictional character, or when they thought that Judi Dench in Ladies in Lavender came off as a dirty old lady, or when they thought Kenny O'Donnell in 13 Days was a fictional character to give Kevin Costner a part when the film used White House transcripts. I guess they just stuck Kenny dialogues into transcripts. It was sad. But to laugh and give a negative review to a movie that tells an important story, whether or not it stars Jennifer Lopez, is awful and shows that there are people who are regulars on this board who are not just stupid but complete morons. And I think what this person was trying to say is that they were trying to combat against the other reviews of this movie that people automatically wanted to jump on just because it starred Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah.
And so if you are leaning on the side of being anti JLo, which if you are, unsubscribe to this show. I don't want to know you. But I think that when you see a movie that stars an actor and actress that you already don't kind of like, you already go into the with this mindset of like this movie's going to be shit, or this movie sucks, or they don't really watch it. They're watching it more as a to be more critical and pick apart these
Yeah.
things that they might not have if they just relax and watch it. And I think that that's what this person was trying to go for, of like, doesn't matter who stars in it. It just matters that this story was trying to be told and that they had the best of intentions.
Yeah. Who's the username for that?
The username is Blanche2, and
Okay.
it's they starred at 7 out of 10, and they titled this review "Really Losing Faith in IMDb."
Okay. I did read that review.
Okay.
But it's not the two that I picked out. But I did agree with that, and I was like, okay, like, and that's what made me keep reading the reviews, because I was like, okay, I'm
Yes.
curious, like, what other people are saying. Um, which is funny because on IMDb it's like a 6.1 out of 10, and then honestly, the reviews I did read at the top of that section were these like kind of like, hey, like we need to like, what are all these other bad reviews about and stuff. One that I really liked touches on the same issue of like, okay, so Jennifer Lopez obviously is the lead in this movie, but she is not the only notable name. So this review talks about this a little bit. It says, for credibility, Antonio Banderas and Jennifer Lopez have had so-so ratings, but have had hits as well as misses, but have not been known to be lacking in integrity. Greg Nava, writer and director, has had some strong directing with some powerful histories. 6+ ratings most of the time. Martin Sheen rarely misses. So, should the first 40% of votes really be won? Were all these cinema professionals so off base, or is an internet group subverting the IMDb voting system in mass? And this is from Joe Blanc on IMDb. And I was
Damn,
like,
calling out those internet trolls.
and I was
Thank
like,
you,
yes,
Joe.
that is a great point. We have some other notable actors and names involved with this. Greg Nava is no novice in directing. Hello, the masterpiece that is Selena. He was also nominated for he was also nominated for an Oscar for El Norte. And so, hello. But this movie by far is a Gigli of any means. But like, where's the criticism for Antonio Banderas or Martin Sheen, like these other very notable actors who are also in this movie? But let's harp on Jennifer Lopez's appearance and her like trying to be serious and in a very important kind of knowledgeable movie.
Yes.
The last one is from, I don't know, really, some people's usernames are like personalized license plates. It's like, huh, where does that come from? It's like Shoko Reese on IMDb, but they say, but it is simply stupid that Lauren eventually is considering to give up her career because of the tragic events. Nava should have made Lopez a pretty standard journalist, which would have made the movie way less pathetic. He couldn't resist his urge to give Lauren a background, which is pretty laughable, and some of the research work she is doing is just unbelievable. So this was like one of those trolly
Got it.
reviews, and I was just like, okay, everything's Lauren's fault, right? Like the whole everything is that character's fault. It's simply unbelievable at all. And I usually sometimes have a problem with suspension of disbelief in movies, and this wasn't a movie where I was like, that doesn't seem realistic. I don't know a lot about like intense journalism, so who am I to poke holes in this plot line to be like, oh, a real journalist would never do that. Like, also, it's a movie. It's got a movie.
Also, it's a movie. But I like to think that, I mean, not even just a real journalist. I think a good journalist, or a journalist who cares deeply about the story that they're going to cover, would do this. Now, obviously we'll get into the plot later. We know that that's not necessarily the case for Lauren Adrian at first, but upon being more invested in this story, this is what a good journalist does. I mean, I don't want to say you have to be a good journalist to put yourself in dangerous situations, but I think it at least goes to show that she's that a passionate journalist
Yes.
who takes their job seriously and who at least takes the stories that they choose to write about to heart, are willing to put themselves in risky situations.
I mean, if we want to talk about risky situations, even making this movie, Gregory Nava said that
Yes.
he received death threats, like other people, maybe other casts, like, you know, the actors received death threats because people did not want this movie to be made.
Yeah, they had difficulty even shooting on set in Juarez. I
Yes.
read that they had ended up doing like a lot of the smaller city filming in Albuquerque or other places in New Mexico and both regular Mexico, but where was it? It was, I know Baja California was one of them. Oh, Mexicali, Baja California, and Nogales, I think is
Nogales.
Nogales, thank you. And in Nogales as well. They took shots of Juarez and then like kind of superimposed them together.
Yeah.
So if you really look for it in the film, you can kind of see what was a local shot and then what was more of a produced shot. But because of the danger that they could have really put themselves in if they had shot the whole thing in Juarez, I think this movie never would have been able to see the light of day.
I think a member of the second unit who did go to Juarez to shoot stuff did get like beat up or something. Like it was still not safe. So
definitely. And then on a regular basis too, I saw that locals had really crowded the streets to watch the filming too, so it was difficult to give the actors and actresses their space to make the movie, just because, you know, people line up to see our girl J-Lo. So there was like that logistical piece on it too, that so many people came to travel on location to watch this film being made.
Yes. So for the people who have not seen Bordertown or might not watch Bordertown, though I highly recommend you do, let's summarize the film to give a good overview before we get into the actual nitty-gritty of our opinions.
Thank you. Thank you for that segment. Would you like me to do the plot?
Yes, ma'am. Take it away.
Okay. All right. So Bordertown stars our main character, Jennifer Lopez, who plays someone named Lauren Adrian, and she is an American news reporter of the Chicago Sentinel. And in an effort to be promoted in her career, her editor and kind of mentor, who she really looks up to, George Morgan, played by Martin Sheen, assigns her to investigate a series of slayings or murders involving young maquiladora factory women in a Mexican border town in Juarez, Mexico. And this is where this is where the majority of our plot becomes nonfiction. So it is very real that these maquiladora factory women do exist. These border towns are real. And this is based off of NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, and that companies and manufacturers had built these large factories in efforts to mass produce goods for America, and the things that were being produced and made, largely based in technology, are made by women, and women were willing to work longer and harder hours, and so the majority of the factory workers who where this movie is based on are women. And as Lauren Adrian is investigating these murders, we see that one woman, Ava, played by Maya Zapata, originally from the southern Mexican state of Oaxaca, takes a bus to go back to her small town after work. And after she realizes that this bus is not taking her home, Maya finds herself in a situation where she is brutally attacked, assaulted, and raped by two men, and left for dead. Maya digs herself literally out of her grave and finds herself back into town, and where she eventually, she can't really go to police to talk about this because the police tend to kind of hush up these stories, or they try to play it off that it was done by someone who might have already been caught or might have already been in jail. So the police, unfortunately, are not always of help to not just fictional Maya, but non-fictional women who are attacked in these towns. And Lauren Adrian eventually heads down to Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua, on the U.S.-Mexico border to investigate the murders, hoping that if she does, she will eventually be promoted within her career as a foreign correspondent. While in Juarez, Adrian meets up with Diaz, Antonio Banderas, whom she's been working with for 6 years prior. They have a previous relationship, which we'll talk about later. The three try to find the two killers and have them prosecuted for this purpose. As Ava, Adrian, and Diaz are working together to try and bring light to this story, you, as the viewer, will have to watch the rest of the movie to see if and how much justice is brought to light, not only to Ava, but of the true women who work in these factories. The majority of this movie is nonfiction. It is based off of what could really happen to a woman and the very little protection that they have, both by the employees of the factories that they work in and of the government as well. And that I don't want to have this episode be a complete political riot or anything like that, because we are a movie podcast. However, after watching this movie and while watching it, I took a huge deep dive on the actual history of it. And I implore listeners who listen to this to do the same as well.
No, I mean, that's well said. I watched it before you, and I asked if you watched it, and part of me was just like, this is like no joke. Like,
this is spicy.
We have to do this episode justice in talking about this, and hence like the not funny one-liners in the beginning and stuff like that. But let's get into the cast, and let's talk about them besides Jennifer Lopez. So for me, Antonio Banderas, I was just kind of like, wait, what? And he was kind of unrecognizable at first, and then I was like, oh shit, that's Antonio Banderas. And then I think he did a great job as Alfonso Diaz. I don't think he, maybe we'll do a roll call on him, but I haven't seen him do a bad performance in anything. So I think he's a pretty well acted actor. Same goes for Mr. Martin Sheen, who I just want to point out, if you don't know, now you know, he is also Latin in heritage, and he had to change his name, or he felt the need to change his name to be able to get roles, because he felt like he wasn't getting opportunities because of that. So hence you have Mr. Emilio Estevez and Mr. Charlie Sheen, who are his sons, but they have wildly different names. Charlie Sheen, in the same vein, has a more American white sounding name, whereas Emilio embraced his heritage and kept his name as is. There is a line in the movie where Lauren Adrian is talking to him, and she's like, you know, you don't know what it's like to, you know, no one wants to be Mexican in this country. And Martin Sheen does. So I thought that was interesting. And I think it's interesting that he chose to do this movie. I wonder if his heritage had any play in him choosing to participate in this movie. Sonia Braga, who plays Teresa, she was in Angel Eyes. She was her mother, Jennifer Lopez's character's mother in Angel Eyes, which I was like, first I keep noticing her from Sex and the City. I'm like, wait. And then I'm like, wait, but that lady was also in Angel Eyes. So
yeah, we have some good like 6 degrees of in this one.
Yeah, we do. And then I have an amazing fun fact about Maya Zapata, who plays Eva. She has played Selena as well.
Really?
Yes. So she has played Selena in a series that is, I believe, a Mexico production called Selena's Secret, or El Secreto de Selena, or something like that. Probably butchered that. But so this is an unauthorized telling of Selena, and that she had some sort of big secret why she died, and very conspiratorial. So part of me is like, Maya, why would you get involved in this? But, you know, everybody needs a check, so I'm not going to hate on her for that. I do love her in this role. I think she was great as Eva, and I think she's an amazing actress. So that's why I looked into her other roles. I'm like, oh, I hope she's done like other stuff then. So I think she's still primarily in Mexico acting.
Yeah.
But
I looked her up on IMDb, and a lot of the titles were had like Spanish titles. But I will say, I mean, I know this is a Jennifer Lopez show, and it's the Jennifer Lopez season 1 of Roll Call. Maya absolutely stole my heart in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
She served so much, and I really, you know, I would not be mad to watch her other things, even if they were all in Spanish, and I can only pick out a little bit of what was happening. But she was so fantastic and raw and believable and emotional, and just someone that you're absolutely rooting for this entire time. She really brought the heart and soul to this movie.
Absolutely. And I feel like this movie hinges too. Why harp on Jennifer Lopez when this movie really hinges on Eva's story? And without the performance that we get from Maya, like, then we could really complain maybe. But even then, like, the message of the movie, it's like, why are you hating on a movie that has a really good message? Let's hate on some movies that don't need to be made, okay? That have no like meaning, purpose whatsoever. But yeah, her performance was heartbreaking. It was believable. It was very realistic. You definitely are rooting for her. You're feeling for her. You're all kinds of emotions involving her. Like, you want her to get through this and have hope. You're also like scared for her in many ways and hoping that she even just makes it out alive, like at the end of it. So yes, kudos to her. I think she is probably the real star of this movie. And I think Jennifer Lopez's involvement is really just like one of those things where it's like, we kind of need someone notable to get this thing to even get made, and maybe from it getting made, have people have interest in it. Because Gregory Nava allegedly came to Jennifer Lopez with this idea or this movie in 1997.
Yes.
So 10 years later, it finally got made and stuff. So that just, it's same with El Cantante. Like, she had to get her footing in the industry to be able to go back and be like, I still want to make these movies. These movies and these stories need to be told. And they're very personal personal Latin American stories that
Hmm.
don't get told often. So,
Yeah. What didn't he approach her on the set of filming Mi Familia, My Family, right?
I think Mi Familia was before 1997, but that's where they first worked together. Also,
Right.
another note, they worked on Mi Familia together, My Family, and Selena together. So
Hmm.
Selena was 1997, so it might have
Okay.
been on the set of Selena or prior or after filming Selena. Which also just goes to show again, this is her third movie with this director. Um, if she wasn't a good actress or someone, people like to work with, I don't think Gregory
True.
Nava would have worked with her again.
True. And to approach her so early in her career, I mean, Selena is what really put Jennifer Lopez on the map. And she had some credits before then, but Selena is what really put her on the map. So to approach her before that movie was released and during the making of, without knowing what her star potential, star quality was, to say, like, hey, I have this passion project that I really am excited about. I want you to work with me on it so early in her career shows you how much faith and trust he had in her and knew how much she would be passionate about the story.
Yes. So I think this is a great point to transition into like interview stuff because he talked about a lot of this and like there's some behind the scenes interviews and stuff
Yeah.
on YouTube of Gregory Nava and Jennifer Lopez talking about the making of the movie, which I found was even more interesting because just the journey of making the movie and all that stuff that we've kind of like talked about here and there. But there was one thing that I really liked hear or not liked hearing, but that really stuck with me and is another case for not harping on who is in this movie or but the message of the movie is that Jennifer Lopez was talking about after premiering the movie in Berlin, her and Antonio Banderas, like after movies like this, I'm pretty sure like it's you have to sit for a moment with what you just witnessed, especially knowing that it's true. Like I went to Sundance and I saw Fruitvale Station, which stars Michael B. Jordan and is a very, very, very true story from the Bay Area where we're from
Mhm.
about a police killing at a transit station called BART that is like a subway train that occurred on New Year's Eve. But like being from the Bay Area and all that stuff only added to my experience. But like that is like one of the most profound movie watching experiences I've ever seen because like just hearing the sounds of like home but in a movie, like hearing the BART train was like, oh my god, this is crazy. And then like hearing people crying in the movie, like audible like sniffles and stuff, and myself crying, and then hearing that confirmation that other people are touched by this, and then like leaving the theater and everyone's just like, you know, like, oh my god, that was amazing, or trying to like get themselves together and stuff like that. So I can only imagine it might have been similar for this movie where people are like sitting with the realities of like this was a fictional portrayal of something very, very real. So, going back, Jennifer Lopez is talking about like they were, I think, like in the hall afterwards, and it's very quiet, but her and Antonio were talking, and he told her that, I don't feel like an actor right now. Like, I feel like it's not important to me as an actor. Like I feel like how was my performance or how did I look? Like I feel like an activist, like we did something good. And I
Mhm.
think that's super important to take away from this movie that no matter how you feel about Jennifer Lopez, maybe you hate Antonio Banderas, like, or Martin Sheen, like, they participated in this movie probably out of the goodness of their hearts of wanting to tell this story because it is a story that needed to be shared and that was being withheld from the public in so many ways, from police reporting and stuff, like
Yeah.
companies not wanting this to get out. So props to
Yeah.
them.
They all cast and crew were met with a lot of physical obstruction and obstruction by media and Mexican government, US government. I mean, there were to me, when I hear about, like, going back to when we were talking about like box office numbers, like, I'm not surprised that it didn't make a lot because it was probably thwarted in a lot of sense. But I think to Gregory Nava and Jennifer Lopez and Antonio Banderas and all the other people who were involved in making this movie, that it wasn't so much about the highest grossing number that they could have made, or really getting a huge check off of it, but so much of being an activist and using their voice, using their celebrity, using their power to get something like this out. And so it's like, who really fucking cares what the box office numbers say? Because I think they were able to release what they originally were setting out to do, despite all of the obstructions that were set in their way throughout the making of the movie and post-production and release.
Exactly. And on that note, I would like to point out that Jennifer Lopez accepted an award from the Amnesty International, who also is very active in dealing with these murders that have gone unanswered in these border towns. And she accepted the award called the Amnesty for Peace Award. And if you're interested, I would look up her acceptance. I think it was very well said and classy. And
it was short, sweet, and to the point.
Yes. And on that note, we have yet to really give our 2 pumps, or, our ratings.
The pumps of butter.
Yeah, on this movie. So, Simone, what are you giving? How many pumps of butter are you giving Bordertown?
All things aside, I'm giving this a solid 4 pumps of butter. This is a movie that I naturally gravitate towards anyways, having it be more of the realm of a true crime. I say true, but like because it's like not just true crime, but it's like an actual true crime movie. And Greg Nava said it best, is that the difference between a movie like this and Silence of the Lambs is that the serial killers are real, and that they're like everyday people and they walk around and can look like you and me. So knowing of the heart of this movie, the passion behind this movie, and how it was told, I give this a good solid 4 pumps. Are there things that I pick apart? Naturally, yes. I think it's hard to find a movie that's so chef's kiss perfect.
Yeah.
There are certain things that I could have done without, or would have maybe necessarily changed, but I don't feel like I have the voice and the stance as, a very privileged white woman to say of like, oh, this movie could have been different, this and this and this and that. Like, I felt like maybe I could have had more of a say for a movie like Monster-in-Law, or a movie like Gigli, or the other kind of Jennifer Lopez movies that we've seen and have reviewed so far in this podcast. But with a story like this, that's so important and not widely known about, I give it a really a good solid 4 pumps. What about you?
I agree. I was gonna go with 4. I would like to add a Jennifer Lopez quote in talking about the movie, saying, this film is about doing something to inspire some sort of change, to get the message out there, and to look at the overlooked. And I think that's super important. I too, as a Black woman, I can't really speak on this issue, as it is a Latin, Mexican, American issue, in terms of, not saying I can't speak about it at all. Like, obviously it's horrendous and very upsetting that this is happening in our world, like many other, issues in the world that we find out about that aren't necessarily in our backyards. But I do think too that I don't want it to seem like, yes, we are a movie podcast and we're not just glossing over like some movie issues of this movie just because it has a great message. But I think an important thing to consider too is that, like, I see it all the time as a Black person, like, we're tired of watching slave movies, we're tired of seeing trauma porn. How many more movies or TV shows are gonna talk about police brutality? Like, sometimes Black people are like, we just want to be normal. Like, can we be normal and average for a hot second and not have to deal with shit we deal with in real life, like, all the time, or shit that is super traumatic from our past, because we're more than those things. Those things are important, but I want to say that I think that's a different issue because we get a lot of that, a lot. It's hard to be critical for me of a movie like this with such a strong message because there aren't a lot of movies like this. There aren't a ton of movies about the murders in Juarez and border towns and stuff. Not that I know of, at least. So, I mean, there might be more. I think there's one more that was like a British production with Minnie Driver that I read about. But you know, it's a topic to me that's not well covered. So to me, I don't think it's completely fair to be critical of something that hasn't been done a lot versus I can be critical of a slave movie because there's a good amount of slave movies that it's like, is this different enough than 12 Years a Slave or Roots? Or like, is this something we have not seen that we needed another one of these? Versus a Bordertown where it's like, I haven't seen anything about this before. This is my first time not learning about it. I've definitely heard about this stuff, but this is my first time seeing something that depicts that and shows that reality in a way. So, we'll try to, I feel like we're so like far from being like in the middle of, we're obviously really, we're becoming really good fans of Jennifer Lopez, so we're a little bit biased in that sense. But I want to be fair to the movie in terms of like not picking apart like things like people go read IMDb if that is what you want to hear. And on that note, let's get into Jennifer Lopez and her character, Lauren Adrian, and her performance and other parts of the movie.
Let's do it. Let's get into this. If I could make one small funny, let's get into this bottle blonde issue because
yes. Okay, this is something I'm okay with picking apart.
So, I mean, I will note everything you just said, Bria, perfectly said. You know, it's hard to be a little bit unbiased, at least in this point in our roll call career of season 1, but especially with a story that is so real. And I don't know if we have said this yet, but you know, with this movie is based off of the fact that within the span of short time, hundreds of bodies of women working in these factories were found. And there's I don't want to say a small number, but it was somewhere in the range of like 300 to 400 women were found dead out in these border town areas. But the actual number of missing women is astronomically higher. We're talking about in the thousands.
Yeah.
So we have, you know, found bodies and known victims of women working in the maquiladores and working along the factories in these border towns. However, the number of women who are missing and most likely murdered are much, much, much higher. So that being said, I feel like Jennifer really took her character into a place that we haven't really seen much. You know, this is not, you're not your romantic comedy. This is not um even it's like a lot
Not
more
a cop.
it's not a cop, it's not Angel Eyes, it's not even El Cantante. It's I don't know. Here's what I have to say. This movie tells a very important story. Were there execution issues? In my opinion, yes, but I'm also just one opinion out of thousands. This is a crossover between a true crime and a fictional thriller. Um, One thing that I really appreciated was this full circle that Lauren Adrian has within her character. Because Jennifer Lopez starts off as this reporter who is sent to Juarez, Mexico to cover the story. She's like, I don't know Spanish. I don't, she sounds like she's not really all that invested in the story, but she wants to take it on because she wants to do better in her career. She wants to move up in her career. But by the end of this movie, and told through flashbacks throughout, that her character Lauren Adrian is Chicana, and she did have parents who were migrant farm workers who were murdered and killed on the farm, but eventually she was adopted out by white parents and therefore grew up in a non Latinx familial household, so therefore when she was growing up might not have been as like proud as her cultural heritage, so she dyes her hair blonde. Jennifer wears this like not great wig, and when she goes undercover in the story, she does dye her hair more to of a natural color, maybe a natural color that we would see on Jennifer Lopez in general. And she has this moment where after she's undercover, she has this bottle called Bottle Blonde, and you see that she's like in her hotel room and she wants to try and go back to what her hair looks like before. But she has these flashbacks of her growing up and flashbacks of her parents, which are very small because they died when she was really little. And then she has these pictures of Eva in her head and the women that she met just in her one day working in these factories, and says, you know what, fuck it. I'm one of these women. It could be me. And she has this really personal revelation that I feel like we have never seen before, because her characters are either where she either plays someone who is like Latina racially ambiguous, or like Latina and very proud, but we've never seen someone who is Latina but hides it, but then has this like full circle moment. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but I really appreciated that moment for her character.
No, I agree. I think the closest maybe was Selena, and not that Selena was hiding it, but like she was like, I'm Mexican American. Like
she didn't speak Spanish. A lot of Spanish, yeah.
Yeah, I don't speak Spanish. Why are we singing in Spanish?
But again, that's all like a true story. That wasn't just a fictional piece.
yeah. But yeah, so totally agree. We don't really see this from her. And even in her last role when she plays Poochie, she's like super Puerto Rican and proud, and like, there's no qualms about like who Poochie is or like where she comes from. That's a big part of El Cantante. But most other rom-coms and stuff, she's been Italian. She's been we just don't speak about her ethnicity or race, so it's not a part of the movie or the story or plot device in any sort of way. But I really enjoyed this, and I think, in my opinion, I think her marriage to Mark Anthony has allowed her to, in some ways, embrace her ethnicity and her culture in a very, very strong way, because I believe we're also coming up on a Spanish album from her, like a completely Spanish album. And then you have El Cantante, and then this movie back to back. Like,
And she released a special song in Spanish for this movie.
yes.
Gorgeous. It plays in the end credits.
Yes, written by Mr. Mark Anthony. But yeah, like I really enjoyed her portrayal of Lauren. I think that if anything, since I'm out in these Twitter streets and TikTok alleys, fending off JLo haters, I think that a lot of people don't. First of all, somebody on Twitter was like, oh, they said some blanket statement. And given the fact that this podcast is watching every movie she's been in, and we're only 10 movies away from being finished, please do not ever blanket statement that Jennifer Lopez can't act, because have you seen all of her movies? Because this definitely, to me, is a movie that I would point people to. Like this and Out of Sight and maybe U-Turn, The Cell are movies that I would point to be like, she's actually a good actress. Like,
and you know that most of these trolls are purely basing it off of her rom-com movies, like the big hits.
Well, that's the funny thing. I also have seen people on Twitter being like, okay, now I know that JLo's singing is questionable. Like, we might not fuck with her in that way, but I like some of her movies. Like, I gotta admit, like, The Wedding Planner, Made in Manhattan, enough. Like those Selena, like she did what needed to be done. And so I know earlier you said like either people love her or hate her. There are some people in La La Land who are just like, you know what, God damn it, I do like that movie. Like Monster-in-Law is my shit. But I don't care that JLo's dating Ben Affleck. Like, who gives two shits? There are people like that. But those are like very commercial movies. And I feel like it is very rare that people bring up some of the more serious movies that she's done. It's more so the rom-coms, the kind of comedies and stuff, like enough as serious as most people get. And I feel like women just love that movie in general because it's like a woman kicking ass. But anyways, this is a role I think that I would put on, hey, you think Jennifer Lopez can't act? Watch this fucking movie, because this was easily a role for me where I was watching it and I was like, oh, this is JLo in this movie. Like, it was like, oh, okay, yes, this is Jennifer Lopez, but excuse me. Yes, this is Jennifer Lopez, but I'm really invested in her character as Lauren, because it's so different than what we've seen before, and it's so different from Jennifer Lopez that
Yes.
It's easy to be like, okay, wow, this is Lauren Adrian, and this is the story that we're following.
Yes. And I think one of the things that helps that is not saying that the other movies that we've reviewed and talked about thus far have bad writing. I mean, we've talked about Gigli, we've talked about some like pretty choice writing, but some of the dialogue in this movie and the way that Jennifer says it with such conviction really makes her stand out as an actress. I mean, once she has this full circle moment and Martin Sheen's character, George Morgan, had kind of lied to her and said, this is the best thing you've ever done. We're going to publish it. Great job, great job. And then someone who Lauren Adrian works with at the newspaper kind of called her up and was like, hey, your story's not going to be published.
Okay, so pause.
Okay.
That guy, Frank, I believe is his name. I didn't know how to feel about him because, like, in early on in the movie, he's calling her and he's like, he's telling her all this stuff, but it doesn't feel like it's like a friend in the office, you know? It feels kind of frenemy-ish, or like, and I'm just like, what is his deal? Like, why is he being such an ass? And
I got that too. I wasn't sure if that was just the way that that actor decided to deliver those lines,
yeah.
but I mean, regardless of how he said it, and it did come across, I'm going to say this in, and I know this is like a funny way to say it for like a man because this word is not always used for men, but he said it in a really like bitchy way. He called
Yeah.
her and was like, hey, your story's not going to be published. You better get your ass down here if you like really care that much about this story. And so
There was
when,
a moment where he was like, it's a good story, like it
yeah,
deserves to. So that's what confused me,
I
because
like
I
to
was just
think of
like,
it. I mean, that's a good point. It's kind of like your frenemy at the office who's like, ugh, like, God damn it. I
oh,
like, we don't always see eye to eye, but like, I do kind of have your back in this weird way.
it's like Devil Wears Prada
Oh, there you go.
with Emily and Andy, because Emily initially is like, another new girl, like whatever, like I'm gonna try to help you, but I'm not really gonna go out of my way to
Hmm.
help you. And then eventually she's like, you know what? Okay, like maybe
I'm
you're
gonna
not
help
that
you.
bad.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
still,
yeah.
like, we're not friends. But but yeah. Okay, anyways.
No, 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 no. That's a good point. But one thing I noticed was after Lauren Adrian has this full circle moment and she realizes, like, shit, this Ava could be me. I am Ava. I am a woman who could be working in these factories, and I very much see myself in the faces of these women, and therefore I'm now all the more invested in this story. She speaks with George Morgan on it, and the reason why the story wasn't going to be published was that they were making some kind of they were extending NAFTA, and they were going to have some kind of an agreement where they were publishing something like that in the paper that they wrote for, and so therefore they didn't want to have a bad light or put like a negative spin because the spin that this
Capitalism. That's
thank
it.
you. Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. So the spin that like the story was going to be put on was that they were putting onus on NAFTA and the Mexican government, but then the Chicago paper that they were writing for decided that they didn't want that wasn't the angle that they wanted the
Yeah.
story for, even though George Morgan had kind of pushed this story into Lauren Adrian's lap and kind of asked her to do it. But anyways, she ends up saying, she's like, it isn't free trade, it's slave trade, it's a goddamn scam, and everybody is making too much money to give a shit about these women. And that's a popular line from the movie. It's like one of those famous quotes that you'll see on IMDb and in general, but like, holy shit, if that delivery didn't give me tingles, that was one of the first times I had goosebumps watching Jennifer Lopez movie, or was like,
Yeah.
she out here acting here. Like,
Yes,
I
yes,
felt
yes.
very strongly about that line.
No, that whole, I think that, like, I think, like, for Emmys and stuff, you submit, like, an episode or, like,
Yeah.
something of, okay, we want you to consider this actor. Here's the episode. Like,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
think is their strongest performance. If I had to pick the strongest performance so far from Jennifer Lopez, it would be this movie and that scene. Because any, like, questions about, like, her role in this movie, like, went out the window for me, because, like, she really embodied like a reporter who really, like you said, has come full circle and has realized, like, I am Mexican and I could be one of these women, and this is important and this needs to get out there, and no one's gonna shut down this story, and if they do, I'm gonna go down fighting for it. Because she very much could have, like, he offers her the job that she wanted initially. He's like, look here, you can have the position, just let it go. Like, it's not that serious. She very much could have been like, I got what I wanted. I don't live in Mexico. I'm never going to see Eva again. You know, hopefully she moves on and heals and all that stuff. But I have a life in Chicago. And at one point in the movie, she explains to, because Eva's like, oh, do you have kids? Are you married? And she's like, no, have this thing called a career, which is another moment of her realizing like what her life is centered on.
Yeah.
And so she very much could have just been like, yes, okay, I got the position I wanted. I'm moving in the direction I want. Sorry this story didn't get out, but it is what it is.
Right.
But she decides to not take the position. She leaves the paper.
Yeah.
She goes back to Mexico. And eventually she takes over the paper that Alfonso was running, who, by the way, his character is running this paper called El Sol, and it seems like it's like not at all a popular paper because obviously they're trying to also highlight these stories of these murders and stuff. And they've been shot at, they've been threatened. The police are very much like, you know, searching the paper and, you know, trying to intimidate them and stuff. And so, unfortunately, his character winds up getting killed due to them actually finding Eva's attacker and him being arrested and stuff. And so when Lauren goes back, she finds out that he's been shot and then eventually he passes. But she winds up taking over the paper after that. And I think that is a very noble thing for this character to do, to go back and also give her life to the same cause. And then we see her also going back to the area that Alfonso takes her, where there are mothers who go and look for bodies because no one else is doing that, and they're the only ones who care enough to actually continue to do that. And so she is still very much involved in these stories and trying to help that community. And I found it really believable, so I applaud her performance. I do think Maya Zapata has the standout performance.
Agreed.
But
yes.
I'm very impressed by Jennifer Lopez. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about her performance.
I mean, this whole thing, sometimes when you get so passionate about a topic or an opinion or a story or your career, you know, people always ask, is this the cross you want to die on? You know, like, do you really want to go down this IMDb rabbit hole? Or like, do you really want to go down this route? Is this really how like passionate you are? And I felt that moment when Lauren Adrian goes to George Morgan and was like, listen, if you drop this story, you lose me, and this is it. And it almost was like, is this really the cross you want to die on? And she's like, yeah, fuck you, I'm out. And
people to me on Twitter and TikTok defending J-Lo is really like, what? It's not necessarily the cross I want to die on. I feel like there's enough haters out there. So
yeah, but I thought that moment was extremely gratifying. And you're right, like she could have easily just been like, sorry, I hope it all works out. But I originally, my first critique of this movie was, my first run was this full circle really necessary? And then my second run was, yes, it was. And depending on how the story goes, like if Martin Sheen didn't like hand this story to her and Jennifer Lopez just was already passionate about this topic and said, screw you, I'm doing a story on this, and like spends time down in Juarez, Mexico doing investigative journalism, that's one storyline. But with the plot that they decided to go with this movie of her not knowing about the murders of these local women working in these factories, and her boss just kind of like tossing this story on her desk to be like, you really want a promotion, you go down and do this. And she's like, okay, fine, I guess. That is what makes sense for her to have this full circle moment. So at first I was like, we didn't have to have this full circle moment if she had already played a character who was like proud of her Chicana Latinx roots and someone who um, might already be like, I guess, out and presenting forward in that way. But because she wasn't, and because that story was given to her, then she had this kind of full circle moment. So I had kind of like two revelations while watching this movie.
Yeah.
Either way, this movie, the script I found was very different from other scripts that Jennifer Lopez has had in the past. Also, being it too that this is a way more serious movie than Monster in Law or even An Unfinished Life. And it's funny too, I just finished editing the Shall We Dance episode, and by the time this episode airs, Shall We Dance will have been out for quite some time. But we got really meta at the end of talking about Shall We Dance. We really talked about like what makes us happy? What's the true form of happiness? We talk about mental illness, we talk about depression, we talk about anxiety, and it's like that's what's been so great about doing this show is that we have these different kind of full circle moments ourselves where we watch these movies maybe a few times through, maybe once if it's not that great, but like we watch these movies and we really think like, huh, wow, and wow, that's something that I'm just really appreciative of. And I don't know how I started that thought, but I'm gonna end it there.
I mean, I agree. I think that I really like movies that I often like bring up again in conversation, or they're either like really fun movies or they're movies that have really stuck with me in some way. And I think this is gonna be one of those movies where like the experience of watching it has in some way impacted me. And even watching like other like you said, mentioning other movies we've watched of Jennifer Lopez, like when I do talk about I don't try to bring up the podcast all the time, but you know, sometimes it happens, or sometimes people are like, hey, what's this, why are you posting on this Jennifer Lopez stuff? Or like, what's this podcast thing, how's that work, what is that? When I talk about it, obviously people, like I was talking to my sister the other day and she's like, oh yeah, you know, I love Enough. Ooh, Selena, you know, that was my movie. I'm pretty sure I watched Selena with her when I was younger. But like those roles are like what people know Jennifer Lopez as. But I feel like this experience, we can definitely speak to roles that aren't well known and that probably are like, again, like I said, like her better performances that aren't these big blockbuster movies. And then going back to earlier where it's like she's damned if she does and she's damned if if she doesn't, it's like, do obviously going forward we get back to where she's doing more, she does like 2 rom-coms, she does like another kind of blockbustery thriller movie. We're gonna get to Hustlers eventually, where these are big mainstream movies and not so much these small maybe passion project movies. Mm-hmm. But it's like you have to think too, like this movie, critics are like, I read that like apparently at the Berlin Film Festival, the viewing for critics or whatever, like people booed the movie. Like the audacity, first of all, just really? On the topic, but okay.
Wow.
But you have actors who like do these movies like, you know what, I want to branch out, I want to do something serious, and then God forbid it's not exactly like what you expect of them and they get trashed for that, and then they're like, okay, well, I guess I just do the Marvel movies, like, or I'm just gonna do the funny rom-coms. Like, no one wants to see me in a Bordertown. Like, I'm just...
That, I didn't know the booing thing. That's crazy to believe. And I will say, back to a point that you made earlier, had Jennifer Lopez's name not been picked out of the Rolodex of other names that were thrown down into the gauntlet, I never would have watched this movie.
No.
And I'm really glad that I did, because I learned a lot from it. And it's just...
Well, I think we've done a good job of being, obviously, we're impressed in comparison to her other roles. This
Yeah.
is a good departure in our journey of like watching her movies.
Yeah.
I could understand general people who only have seen her bigger movies being like, what? But let's not criticize people for trying new things and stretching their wings, because then you just keep people in the cages that you've built for them. And so, as much as Jennifer Lopez's celebrity had grown and might have eclipsed her talent in terms of acting, I think that this movie is a good way to shine light again on her talent as an actress.
Agreed. Wonderfully put, Bria. Wonderfully put.
So, I mean, obviously, I think this would probably, what do we think about it holding up to today? We haven't talked about the trailer either, which I think is the best trailer that I've watched so far.
Yeah, it's good. The trailer for this has an equal mix of suspense and thriller, but also does a pretty decent job at, I mean, it shows what the movie's about without showing how the movie ends, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. And I agree with you there. This movie, I think, was also produced, or you can also find this movie fully in Spanish.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. I don't know if Maya Zapata like refilmed her scenes, but when trying to find this movie, because it's hard to find to stream. It's not on all major streaming services. I saw it was on Cinemax for a bit, so if you're on
Yeah.
like major cable networks, then it's a little bit easier to find. When I watched this movie, I saw that there were many different iterations in languages for that, which is pretty cool. But yeah, no, the trailer's fantastic. And I it I think if I didn't know what it was about, I would still see the movie based off this trailer.
Yes. I think so. Earlier, you were like, if we weren't doing this, you probably would never watch this movie. But I think if I
Yes.
saw this trailer, I would watch this movie. And I'd be like, Jennifer Lopez is in a movie like this? Like,
Yeah. You're right. You're right. See, if I let's say this trailer like came up as a random ad or a random trailer before another movie that I would have seen around that same time, I would have been like, huh, yeah. Like I would have had the same reaction of like, oh, Jennifer Lopez is in this like movie that's like true crime and thriller, and then besides The Cell, which would be like my only experience of her being in a movie that was like horror in that
mhm.
genre, I would have been really surprised seeing her in it.
So I think that it's probably very obvious to people that I think that this movie would hold. I think it holds up to today, and I also think that it could be remade, or that the
Yes.
story deserves to be retold, maybe in a
Yes.
different way. Maybe they can touch on the crime aspect, the domestic violence stuff that people, say like, oh, well, this is also a possibility. I just want to point out too that people saying that, oh, maybe it's Americans going over the border and killing for thrills, and then that doesn't necessarily register to me as a reason that these thousands of murders of women and women going missing is happening. Like,
Yes.
I
That's a
don't think
whole
it's
other
sport.
different movie. That's borderline Hostel, what the plot line of Hostel is like.
Yeah,
Where
this
like,
is not Dexter. Like,
yeah, people don't, I mean, I'm sure unfortunately scenarios like this exist, but
yeah.
that's a very romanticized version and kind of an easy cop out as an excuse to not even justify these murders, but just to say like, well, this is the reason why like the murders are so high in numbers. Like I think that that's a really
I
bullshit.
mean, you can't exclude, like, obviously, just like maybe some of the murders are definitely like this one thing, and then some of them are this. it's very possible it's a mixed bag of what's going on, but
Right.
like that one just threw me off. I was just like, is that really what people are trying to like spin
Yeah.
this as?
Well, and either way, no matter how they're being killed, who they're being killed by, these women deserve justice
Yes.
because they are mothers, they are daughters, they are sisters, they are aunts, they
They're
are
people.
people. They are people. Um, so yeah, holy shit. I mean, just this one scene in particular that sticks out is when Lauren Adrian goes undercover. She sits with Ava at one point and they take pictures of the different buses that are on the same route that picks up Ava, and they find the driver that picked her up that night that took her out into the middle of nowhere to commit these crimes and leave her for dead. And Jennifer's character gets on the bus with this driver, puts her in the same exact scenario of, do you mind if I stop off for gas? And then drives her out there in the middle of nowhere. But instead of taking her to this kind of like sanded desert area where like decoy cops and people are set up waiting for her, he takes her to this junkyard. And Lauren Adrian does escape her attack and has to hide in the junkyard, but she ends up finding herself in this mass grave of women, women in different forms of decomposition, women who have been there for months, years, women who have been there for days, weeks. And that scene as like, so it's funny because normally when I watch a movie like this, had it be maybe Silence of the Lambs or something that was a little bit more like fictional and like campy and serial killer, you would find yourself squealing in this scenario like, ooh, gross. Yeah. But instead, I was by myself watching this movie. Kevin was out of town. I would have watched this movie by myself anyways. No way Kevin would have ever watched this. It's too spicy. He wouldn't have liked it. But I watched that and had a different reaction of like, ooh. It was just more like horrified because that's real.
Yes.
And it takes it to this more personal level of like, fucking hell, that's real. There are mass graves of women that we can't find that are most undoubtedly out there somewhere waiting for their bodies to be claimed by their families. And it was just, if you're a non-believer of Jennifer Lopez, watch this movie. Don't watch Geely. Don't watch Monster-in-Law. Don't watch Me. I mean, Meet in Manhattan's fine, but like, you know what I mean? Like, if you are on the fence of, is Jennifer Lopez an actress, just fucking watch this movie.
Yeah.
It'll take you to some places as a movie viewer.
I feel like that scene really grounds the movie back to like when we watch Eva get attacked.
Yeah.
Because it definitely goes into this realm of like, you know, investigation, and they're, you know, taking pictures and they're trying to get evidence of like who it could be so they could ask Eva. There's a scene where Lauren and Alfonso are doing recon and then they get chased down by a truck and they have to scramble away as well. And then obviously there's Lauren wanting to go on this recon mission and try to be bait and all this stuff. And obviously she's preparing for it, and we are preparing as the audience for, okay, she's gonna go on the bus and they're gonna catch the guy and stuff. But the curveball of him taking her to this new place is like, oh fuck. And then obviously you want her to make it out alive, so you're like I was cheering her on. I was like, when she put the rocks in her bag, I was like, oh, it's a good idea. And then finally when she got away and stuff, like I was like, oh my god, like run, like, you know, get out of there. But when she winds up falling into this mass grave, and you know, you kind of see small glimpses of these different bodies in various stages of decomposition, it again brings it back that this isn't like a thriller like, oh my God, get away from the bad guy movie. Like, this is also very, very real too.
Yeah, she's walking in footsteps of women who had been in the same exact situation,
Yeah,
and
and who didn't
unfortunately,
have the ability to
who didn't
foresee
make
that
it.
this might have happened to them. Like, and she went in there better prepared than anyone else because she
Yeah.
knew that this happened before and she was expecting something to happen. It went a little sideways because she wasn't where she thought they were going to wind up, but she did, again, put the rocks in her bag, was able to fight him off and stuff like that. But yeah, so I mean, that in a way is a privilege that those other women didn't have. That, they just were trying to go home. But that scene of her with the bodies and stuff is just like, oh, fuck. Like, it just, again, like, this is real and this is like way beyond like this movie and Eva's story. Like, there's untold stories, there's unclaimed, people again missing. Like, so, yeah, I think that given that this movie didn't get widely released, I think that I I have said watching The Wedding Planner that I think we're in a time where we need like bring the rom-com back. Like we need like fun movies. It's been a heavy like 2 years. It's not getting lighter.
Yeah.
But I think that there's always room for movies like these,
Yes.
and I think that maybe we might be in a better place to welcome stories like these in a
Yes.
bigger way. And especially with like streaming and stuff like that, like
Yes. Yeah, that's what makes me sad is that this movie didn't really get to see its full potential in the light of day. And I wish that it had. Um, but I also agree with what you had said in that this is past year and a half has been extremely difficult on a lot of us, and that maybe we just need a little bit more lightheartedness. And I glanced at our movie list that we have left. Bria mentioned that we have like 10 or less movies less, and they're all pretty lighthearted. I mean, Boy Next Door is going to be kind of a thriller. Um and we have, I don't know. I mean, we'll see how Ice Age Continental Drift's gonna pair out for us. But no, I'm saying in all shits and giggles, I think this movie could absolutely hold up to its own today. I could see it very much being made like with how Netflix and HBO have really kind of hit the
yes.
ground running with a lot of these true crime things, to tell this story, whether or not it stars a fictional character or if it's just a documentary that channels stories of survivors or mothers and sisters or friends of factory workers who knew people who went missing, to have that more of an investigative journalist approach.
Yes, I think that is a great idea. There is a movie that this kind of reminded me of. It's called Spotlight, and I watched it on Netflix.
Oh, that was Oscar nominated. That was a great movie.
Yes, but it has another big cast. It has Mark Ruffalo, Michael Keaton, Rachel McAdams, like, and they are journalists as well investigating pedophilia in the Catholic Church in the Boston area. And I
That was
think
a good movie.
if this subject matter could get that treatment, then it would do wonders for.
Yes. And I actually just had this revelation of like the first thing that came out of my mind when you, or my mouth when you said Spotlight. I was like, Oscar nominated. Movies like this deserve that same kind of attention.
Yes.
I mean, I know to be like Oscar nominated, you have to have all these certain qualifications and stuff like that. But movies like this and stories like this deserve that same screen time, bitch.
Okay. This could get cut. But speaking on that, like, this is why people of color are so up in arms. This is why, people are very vocal about the Oscars are so white, or like the Emmys, like Michaela Cole getting snubbed at the Emmys for oh my god, I May Destroy You, and then shows like Lovecraft Country being like sweeping Emmy nominations and getting canceled and not getting a second season. Like, it's that infuriates people of color, because it's like people want to be like, oh, well, awards don't matter or whatever, but they do, because in moments like what you just had, which was a total unconscious moment, but you heard that movie and you're like, oh, that was nominated for Oscar. Or you hear a show and you're like, oh, didn't that win like some Emmy or something? And I think we're doing better. I think we can obviously still strive to do better. So having movies like
Oh, that was
Parasite,
2020. I was
yeah,
thinking of this year. So, like,
did
movies that came out last year. So, Parasite won Oscars of 2020, but it came out in 2019.
yes, Nomadland, I think,
Yes. Yeah,
but
Nomadland did well.
that has a woman of color
Are you
director.
thinking of Minari?
Yes, that's the one I'm thinking of, Minari. But
Mhm.
having those movies like win those awards are great strides and stuff. But
Yes.
we also like we need other stuff to still be nominated. It can't be
Yes.
like, let's give this one movie of color a
We'll
shot.
give it to them, yeah.
Yeah, like, and then not even just like we'll give them the award, but like having like all the not all the nominations, because there is I saw a tweet that was like, black people, do you watch like all white shows? Like, can you watch all white shows or movies, or does that ruin it for you? That's all I've been doing all my life. Like, besides like, and I think watching stuff that's made, for your culture is just like an intuitive thing, but
Mhm.
also it's that duality of like, I also need to know about this stuff because this is what other people are talking about outside of like my community or culture, or like at work, this is what, everyone's talking about in the coffee room. Like,
Mhm.
so, but that's not something that I'm like, oh, that cast is all white, I'm not watching that. Like, if it's a good
Mhm.
enough story and it deserves, like, if it interests me, then, I'll be like, oh, that looks interesting. I love The Crown. It's all white people. All British white people.
I'm
Love the
sorry,
hell out of
what? The
it.
queen isn't a person of color in the crowd?
The OC.
Mhm.
Like, one of the reasons I watched it was my teacher. She's like, my son is watching this show with all these rich white kids. Like, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch it, like, and see what this is about. I'm gonna do some recon for
Yeah.
you, and wound up obsessed with it. But anyways, like having having these shows also get like the same opportunities as some of those shows that
Yeah.
might shows or movies that are like, this is a good movie, but like this also was really good and deserves just as much, if not
Yes.
equal attention. Like, so I don't know where I
See,
was going with that.
no, no,
This
no, no,
can
no.
get cut for
No,
sure. But
don't, because I know you're going to be the one who edits this episode. I
I'm
mean,
cutting it. Sorry.
don't. I think, I think this ending segment was a good revelation. I mean, not just definitely personally for me, of like this unconscious idea of what is an Oscar movie and what qualifies, like, yeah, like what, how deep does a movie have to be for it to be qualifying as an Oscar movie, slash whose story does it tell and who does it appeal to the masses. And obviously it's uncomfortable for a lot of people who grew up within the Catholic faith to learn about and know more about pedophilia that happens within the papacy. But it can be just as uncomfortable but important to learn about women in another region of the world that's not just based in the US, but just based within, Mexico, which is,
Our neighbors right
we're
next door.
neighbors, to uncover these stories and to sit with that uncomfortableness and be like, oh shit, this is real.
Also, I mean, I think this country lacks like it has a serious empathy problem, but like it does. But being able to see these, like, this is why art is important, because it allows us to see things that we might not see walking through our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Like, I live in a suburb. I don't live in a very primary black neighborhood. So there are things I wouldn't see on the day to day, like, because of that. There are things I've seen just by proximity of my blackness, for sure. But for someone who definitely is not at all connected to black culture, you're never gonna see like something like The Wire besides seeing it on TV and then maybe understanding that, like, okay, these people aren't doing this just for shits and grins and to reenact Grand Theft Auto. This is their life. This is all that they see. Like, there's nothing else for them to escape. Or this movie in particular, okay, we see a scene of Eva trying to run away and cross the border and getting wind up, the people trying to help them, leaving the car, leaving them in a
she
trunk.
almost escapes death for the second time, being left in this hot trunk crowded with other people who are trying to escape. I mean, Jesus, like, that's a whole other second plot of the story. She escapes right before her trial because she
is scared
because she knows that there are not a lot of people on her side for this, and she's gonna have to face her attacker. And she's going to have to point fingers at people, and knowing the history of the judicial system based in where she lives, like, she knows that the odds are really stacked against her. So yeah. I mean, Jesus, I mean, I forgot about that whole other second kind of plot line to the story.
But watching a movie like this and like being like, okay, yeah, I can see why someone would want to come to our country instead and you know, leave. And I'm not saying everywhere is like this, but there are good reasons why people want to leave, you know, their countries, and a lot of them are situations where it's dire life or death things like this, of like, look at all the stuff that's happening with Palestine and Israel and stuff. Like, it's just like mind, like, we as Americans, we often can't imagine ourselves in those situations because it's not dire like that. But like, being able to witness movies and television programs, documentaries and stuff that shed light on these things, I definitely take them as like having more empathy and open heart for those situations. Some people definitely don't even expose themselves to these things, but the bigger the platform, even if I don't necessarily think this is an Oscar-worthy movie, but it was in a film festival. Even winning film festival awards are big, and it was nominated at the Berlin Film Festival. But things like that, like, you know, this was a Cannes winner. This was a Sundance audience, you know, winner. Stuff like that, where the New York Film Festival, like, those things definitely give a perception to people who might otherwise not watch something, be like, oh, you know, people who might be a little snooty about movies and might be like, you know, there's people who watch all the Oscar-nominated movies every year because they, like, I want to have a fair understanding of what deserves what. I've dipped into a category once and just watched all the movies because I saw Olivia Colman was nominated, and I was like, oh, damn, she won an Oscar and she was on the ground, like, good for her. And then I was like, wait, she was up against Glenn Close? Oh shit, what did Glenn Close do? And I watched her movie, and then I was like, okay, wait, these are two very notable white actresses. Let me watch these other movies. And one of the movies was another Mexican film, and then I forget what the other movie was. Oh, it was with Melissa McCarthy, which threw the fuck out of me because I was like, she was nominated for an Oscar? For what?
This year?
Um, Olivia Colman won, I think, 2019,
Oh, yeah.
2018.
Yeah.
So whatever year that was, Melissa McCarthy was nominated as well, which like again, like Jennifer Lopez, like where I said, you see
Mm-hmm.
this trailer and you're like, oh, J-Lo's in a movie, like Melissa McCarthy is in a movie that is
Got
worthy of an
it.
Oscar
She's
nomination.
out here acting kind of thing.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the other movie I felt was a very, very compelling story that like I'm like I would never see another movie like this probably. And the person in me is like, give it to the like unknown Mexican actress who's never done this before. Like, fuck all these other Hollywood actresses. But Olivia Colman's performance was really good. They all were really deserving of the nominations, but like that movie, probably very few people know about it. Probably very few people will remember. Like that actress may never act again. Like that might have been her one and done, and but
Okay. Olivia Colman, was that for the other sister
it's for
or
the favorite.
the favorite? Yeah, yeah, yeah. With Rachel Wiesel and
And Emma Stone.
Emma Stone. Yeah, yeah. That was good. That was a good one.
When
But I think to
that
your
was
point,
2019.
okay. Yeah, I remember her because that was the last time the Oscars were. Well, yeah, that was pre-panty, baby.
Oh, that was the last like live
Well, no, I mean,
Oscars.
to be fair, the Oscars in 2020 were live because that was right before shit hit the fan. That was when Parasite won for Best Picture.
Okay. Yes.
But either way, I think to your point of I'm I'm glad that artists take stories like this, turn them into films so that people can be exposed and understand about issues that they might have never even known about. And I know that there's different ways that we see movies. There's this form of escapism. You can have a shits and giggles laugh by seeing Fast and Furious, or you can see a movie that really makes you think, or you can see a movie that really makes you laugh and feel good. For movies like Bordertown and Spotlight, movies that do make you think critically. And Fruitvale, I mean, geez.
Yeah. I just want to uh give credit to the actress. See, I totally, obviously, I know who Glenn Close is because I have like a movie relationship with her from other stuff, and Melissa McCarthy, and so those names are very memorable to me. But the actress who was also nominated for Best Actress in 2019 was Yalitza Aparicio, and she's a Mexican actress. The movie was Roma. I really enjoyed it. It's a black and white movie. Again, another story that I feel like gives people a chance to understand like people of another culture and another place and their situations and all that stuff that you might not see walking out your front door. But if they let me vote on the Oscars, I would pick her just because I would have been like, these other white ladies are gonna be fine. This girl did amazing. This movie is really interesting.
You are right.
Give Yalitza the award. But okay, let's wrap it up. I mean,
okay.
Just going on and on, very preachy. Do you have a movie spread and cocktail or?
Okay, so I kept this one very light. Usually when we make a movie spread and cocktail, it is like some kind of chagrin to something that the main character might drink or something that is already like a huge part of the movie. For this one, I looked up 2 different cocktail recipes. I was trying to find if something like a bottle blonde existed, just a la to the bottle of hair dye that Jennifer Lopez uses in this movie. There is a cocktail called the Dirty Blonde, which is OJ, orange juice, beer, but mostly like a blonde ale and vodka. And then one, but I don't know. I don't really feel like that really fits. I wouldn't call Jennifer Lopez a dirty blonde at all in this movie.
No.
But the other cocktail that I looked up was El Diablo, which is something that Eva's character calls her second attacker, El Diablo, which feeds into her narrative of people not believing her because they often say, since she is more of an indigenous woman of Mexican heritage, that their people tend to mostly believe in like spirits or attribute certain phenomenons to have it be some kind of a spirit. So when she was saying like El Diablo, when she was having these intense flashbacks of her attack, and she was saying El Diablo está aquí, that the devil is here, that people were trying to brush her off as
Teresa.
yeah, that like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, like people saying that all the time, you know. So but in reality it's legitimately her having these
PTSD.
unbelievably PTSD, post-traumatic flashbacks of her rape and sexual assault, and that there actually was a second attacker, as we'll see in the movie. But anyways, there's a cocktail called El Diablo. I don't know if it's necessarily appropriate to have a tongue-in-cheek snack and cocktail spread, but regardless, if you're interested in pairing something that might go with this movie, El Diablo is ginger beer, lime juice, and tequila. I would fuck with that cocktail. That sounds
like a Moscow Mule.
It kind of is. Well, Moscow Mule is usually vodka, I believe, but but it's essentially the same roots as a Moscow Mule, but tequila instead.
That was gonna be red. I'm a little disappointed. Maybe I'm being too kitschy with it, but also I'm sorry, but I must go back and point this out too.
Please do.
Also talk about another full circle moment of Lauren Adrian is that she winds up having PTSD nightmares about her attack that she experienced because she put herself in as bait. But that's another moment that kind of not helps her, but relates her and connects her to Eva in a more profound way. And I also I forgot about this, I wrote down that, you know, going into this, Lauren is very much trying to kind of save Eva and help her.
She has the savior complex.
Yeah, but Eva winds up kind of saving her in a way. So it's a very solid movie trope.
She does. And I'm glad that it worked out that way, that it wasn't, you know, and a man, it wasn't George Morgan, it wasn't Alfonso Diaz, it wasn't
Frank.
It wasn't Frank. Like they ended
Frank, like your story is getting squashed.
That these women trauma bonded, if you will, over their individual experiences with their attackers. And yeah, it's like wow. So I mean, going back to a snack and cocktail spread, I feel like with this movie, because usually with a snack and cocktail spread, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, it's a little bit mischievous, or like play on words with what's happening in the movie plot. But I would say if you're going to watch this movie, I would say don't drink. Have it be an incredibly sobering experience for you, and have it be
have a drink on hand.
Have a drink on hand for after.
You might need one afterwards.
You might, and just learn. Just come with an open mind to learn.
The more you know. And we're out. That is it. Thank you for listening to this week's episode, and to the people who've stuck with us so far, please come back for another episode of the great value version of Inside the Actors Studio.
But seriously, if you do like us enough to stick around, please, it would be my pleasure if you would take another deep dive down this IMDb rabbit hole with us as we discuss Jennifer Lopez in a few years later, 2010's romantic comedy, The Backup Plan.
Yes, JLo is a mom by the time we get there, so it should be interesting. And on that note, if you've got nothing better to do, go figure out a theme to watch a bunch of movies you've never seen.
I'm your host, Simone. Please subscribe to this blessed mess and leave us a like and review if you are into it.
And I'm your host, Bria, and it will be awesome for you to wipe off those buttery popcorn fingers and give us a review. And also follow us at Roll Call Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and my favorite, Twitter, where I will be standing all things Jennifer 2.0 as well as Jennifer Lopez. I have officially been welcomed in by the J Lovers on Twitter, so I'm excited.
Oh my god. And because Bria's welcome, that means that I am also welcome.
Yes. So on that note, this has been another episode of
Roll Call and Cut. Take a look, it's in a book, The Reading Rainbow. Are you ready to outro?
I feel like this is like going to be a 3-hour
Yeah, it's
podcast.
pretty long. It's long. Dude, it took so much to get Shall We Dance under 2 hours, dude. And like anyways, all right, let's outro. Let's go.